start, and I will leave the interesting bits to this to other gentlemen. Okay, so we are the keyring-maint team, and what do we do? We manage the keyrings.
Hold the mic closer to your mouth.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So we are the keyring maintaining team. What we do is we maintain the keyrings that define who is part of what part of Debian, or who is in which. I don't like saying category, but well, it's the right word. The keyring is formed from these 6 files or directories, depending how you look at them. The naming is suboptimal because it's mostly historic. So when I joined Jonathan, who has been a longer time maintainer, keyring maintainer, we only had the Debian keyring and the not used ones. Nowadays, Debian keyring means Debian developer. Debian maintainers means who is a maintainer. Debian non-upload are non-uploading developers. And the other 3 are kept, well, Debian role keys is something that I guess is not used for basically anything.
Most of the role keys have moved to more specific packages. So previously that would have had things like the archive key, which has moved to its own package. There are a few other ones like that which are actually maintained by their own teams. So we don't actually look after those anymore, but they're just around for historic reasons.
Yep. And we have, well, those keys that are explicitly kept for history, those the emeritus and removed keys, but are not, no longer used. We don't see here, well, we do have, and I made a little mistake, we have emeritus keyring PGP and GPG, well, because of some of the migration history we will explain now. No? So, well, this is like an overview of how the number of Debian keys we're currently handling. We have again passed the 990, or just about 1,000 developers with developer keys. We are at, well, I'll show the numbers just next, somewhere around here. But we are close to 270 maintainers and about 10 non-uploaders. I mean, this is just over time. Our history just goes back to 2008, because before that it was not maintained in a version control system. So we have the history, but it's up to you to mine the data. Okay, I think. Yeah.
So one of the concerns recently that I'm sure people have heard about, and not so recently, is that we're trying to make sure that the Debian keyring does not contain cryptographically weak or weak for protocols keys that could actually affect the contents of the archive. So in particular, there have been a couple of successful moves and some that have not yet been successful but will be soon. One of them was that PGP keys are a certificate that wraps up a public key material. But there are different formats of PGP certificates. There's PGP v3 and PGP v4. And everyone should be using PGP v4. And in fact, everyone in Debian is now using PGP v4 because we wanted to get rid of PGP v3. I can talk a bit about why PGP v3 is a terrible format. But the simplest answer is it's trivial to forge a fingerprint for a PGP v3 certificate. Trivial. So those are going away. Those went away, and the final, I think, little bump down there is a nice triage that just finally said, okay, it's too late. Where it says GPG there, that should say PGP v4. Yeah, sorry. So that's okay. So people got the message, they started moving away, some of them never made it, and then there was this nice bump of actually just kicking out 17 keys that people just couldn't be bothered to swap out for v4. One more? So the other thing that we're interested in is the strength of the key. So cryptographic keys have a key length, different algorithms, the key lengths mean different things. And I just wanted to give a brief background for why we are trying to get rid of shorter keys. And so this is a table from from eCrypt, which is a European cryptography report from 2012, so 2 years old now. And it's a description, I don't know if you can read this on the slides here, but basically it describes different types of key, these are different key types here. RSA, DLOG is like DSA, and EC is elliptic curve. And for keys of these lengths, so this is the DSA size and the RSA size, you'll see that those are paired up. You measure the strength of a key in sort of equivalent bits of symmetric security. And there's a little number there. And so what this means is that an attacker would need to do, say, 2 to the 80th operations to crack a 1,248 bit DSA key. So this is rough, right? All of these estimations are very rough. There's a bunch of different details about how an attack like that would go. And here they've got common key sizes that show that a 1024-bit DSA key or RSA key is about 73 bits of security. So what is 73 bits of security? Can you go back one? So this is the same report. You can go and find this. I can point you to the eCrypt slides. So this is a table that just shows some bits of symmetric security, and then there's a description, and there's a comment. And so 73, well, 72 is the closest here. It says short-term protection against medium organizations, medium-term protection against small organizations. And there's no comment. 96, legacy standard level, roughly 10 years protection. So 1024-bit keys are way too short for something as important as the ability to upload into the Debian archive. We've been trying to get people off of 1024-bit keys for a long time, and we haven't done it yet, but we plan to. So 2 forward, please. If you weren't convinced that you should move away from it, the Certificate Authority Cartel, via the CA browser forum, they have baseline requirements, which they publish and update. This is the update from earlier this year, V118. You cannot issue, if you're a member of the Certificate Authority Cartel, you cannot issue an end entity certificate with 1024-bit, with anything less than 24-bit RSA as of the end of last year. So we are behind what the Certificate Authority Cartel is requiring for end entity certificates for mycrappywebsite.com.
That's a great site.
So, okay, so this is a breakdown of the different keys, different key sizes. These are non-uploaders. You can see that the non-uploaders are quite good at having strong keys. No 1024-bit RSA keys or DSA keys. Next. Yeah. And the Debian maintainers are also quite good. We still have a few 1024 bits in there. That's 50 or so, but on balance, they're much stronger.
I want to point out something here that, well, both the maintainers and non-uploaders have reacted quicker because, well, they're newer figures. So we were able to require this earlier on. But you see, there's this flattening trend. So I think this it can be harder to to get to those last 50 if we don't act quickly on it.
The other thing that's worth...
Sorry, yellow is 1024-bit, purple is 4096. Green is 2048.
Yeah, so just to actually back up a bit, our current recommendation is that people use 4K keys. We have allowed 2048 keys into the keyring. So in general, people are going with the recommendation. There have been some reasonable reasons to use a shorter key length. In particular, the OpenPGP smart cards were originally limited into the key length they could support. Anyone who doesn't have a restriction like that, we really are saying 4K keys, which is why you'll see them being the predominant key length. The other thing to point out about the maintainers is some of the downtrend in the 1K keys here is because maintainers become developers, and that's a straightforward transition of key, and we haven't necessarily been enforcing a key change at that point. Phil?
Shouldn't that microphone? Or repeat the question?
I can repeat the question.
Shouldn't that be like a flaw and also the subkeys? Because the subkeys are used for signing packages.
So, sorry, shouldn't that be a...
This probably only looks at like the length of the main key.
So Phil's point is that we're only looking at the key length of the primary key on the key. It could be that the subkeys are either a longer or shorter length. Longer doesn't really help because you're still limited by the primary key, but if the subkeys are shorter length, then that could mean that they are weaker than they seem. I think in general what I've seen is that subkeys are usually longer, if anything, but usually the same size.
Well, and this is the graph that worries us most. Although we have a converging trend here, this is for the developers. And here it looks we're heading in the right direction. You can very well see the places where we've sent mail, sent posts, and things to the people to really update.
And you probably can't see the scale of the 5 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Please. Is there a second mic? Do we have a second mic? But maybe we can just practice.
Okay.
One thing you could do is cross-reference this yellow line with people that are here at DebConf now.
So the point has been made that we could cross-reference the line with the number of people here at DebConf, and I have a list of all 517 short keys, and I need to talk to the organizer to try and get a dump of the people here. There's no easy way to do that at the moment. Steve, you were next.
Wait.
Until I saw that number, my question was going to be, why haven't we just dropped these people already? They've been told a dozen times already.
Yes.
So we have already. So we've already started looking at that. Of the 517 keys that are short, 253 of these people are already known to MIA. So yeah, there is an issue there about what's going on, and we have already started having discussions with both DSA and MIA about what we do with these people, and we will eventually get to the point that we drop them.
Okay, please name and shame. If you know someone on that this list, go and slap them.
Yeah, part of the thing is we didn't want to push this too much earlier because, well, you can see we started like really caring about this around 2010, and that would have meant either both a tremendous amount of work for us that's coming. We know it's coming, but also that we would end up locking 3/4 of Debian out of the project. Nowadays, we're only going to lock 1/2 of the project away.
Half of them are MIA.
Yeah. Our estimation is that most of them are not active currently.
I should clarify the MIA figures. It doesn't mean they're actually MIA. It just means that they are known to the MIA database. They are in discussions with them. So it could be people who are just not completely active or haven't been seen, rather than people who are truly missing. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they really are people we should drop from the project. And one of the things we've been very careful about as keyring-maint is we don't want to kick people out who actually still have an interest in being involved in Debian. We don't want to force people out of the project. And that's the line we've taken so far, and it's come to the point that we are actually going to have to drop people. But we've given this length of time because we really did want people to have an opportunity to get it sorted, enough time to come to a DebConf or another local event and get a key cross signed, and we felt that we've bent over backwards and made quite a few meals about get this done, and now comes the time that we really do need to sort of say, take a harder line on it.
Well, we will now show. Until now, we have stated facts. I will also continue. Oh, please, Enrico.
Once the obvious ones like MIA and so on have been taken away, then I think we enter the domain of people who are not necessarily paying a lot of attention to Debian Dev and Announce. And I'll be glad to send a round of emails to those people with Damn Hat saying, hi.
Yeah. Okay, so what we're going to present now is how we want to go forward with this, and also some bits of the problems we've had, right? So yeah, I didn't update this. Sorry. Well, anyway, it's more or less the same. Oh yeah, right. I did update it. So we finally were talking about setting up a cutoff date. Yeah, after the end of the year, after the last day of the end of this year, we will just disable all 1K keys because, well, I think there's an agreement that we can and we should do this. Well, it's.
So that's a good response, because what we're considering doing in terms of this is we'll send a mail to DDA, which everyone will ignore, because I think anyone who's paying attention has hopefully already made the switch. But I know for a fact that there are at least 3 people here at this conference who have not made the switch. So even people who are paying attention to DDA and turning up to events have not done this.
Stand up. Point them out.
I will name them once I have got a definitive list and have emailed them once. No.
You can figure it out yourself. It's not that hard.
You can take the Debian keyring and do exactly what I did, which is dump it, look for the 1024 keys. It's not hard to do. We will mail all of them individually as well and send them a mail going, by the way, this is going to happen. So we are going to send those mails out, but we did want to run it by people first as going, this is what we're going to do.
So let me also say that the bottom point here is kind of critical, right? So there are 3 different kinds of developers that we can imagine in this situation, right? Which are people who are I'm sorry. There's a difference. There's 3 types. There's people who are ignoring. People out of Debian who are interested in maintaining the infrastructure that they need to keep Debian secure.
Just yeah, one thing about this is, well, there are many special cases. We are reaching the point where, well, we will find a way to somehow kick those cases. Something that was quite strange to understand how is that well, when Aníbal sent the call for keys for the key signing at the DebConf, we got like 12 1K keys that, well, they were kicked out of the key signing party. They will not take part of this. Well, one of the maybe it's yeah, one of the things that may be difficult sometimes is that there are many people who are not socially involved in Debian, so those are the faces we don't know. Those people, well, they have a hard time. Maybe they don't. They care about their particular itch, but they do not care about being a member of socially a member of the project, meeting people and all that. So getting their keys signed is also difficult, well, for many reasons. Yeah, not only because they are far away, but maybe because they don't feel like at home socially with the rest of us. I don't know. Thing is, up to now, a very good thing is that I feel we have, as a project, honored this to meet a person before signing their keys.
Of a lot of people around the world and being nice to people that have been part thus far of the Debian project. So on one hand, I like to de-emphasize the fact that we're not kicking out people of the project. So technically, you acting on the keyring will make them unable to do specific kind of participation in Debian. But I'm pretty sure that when those people get a new key in the keyring, will not have them go through NM again. So it's not like we're kicking people out of the project. We are putting in place technical means that sacrifice their current ability to participate, favoring the security of a lot of people around the world. So this is one first comment I wanted to make. And the second one is that we're very much likely in a 80-20 situation in which I think 80% of the cases you are going to deal with are people that are not paying attention. And maybe 20% or maybe 5% are the people with specific condition you have mentioned. So I think you should put in place a process that takes care of the 80% of the people, like mailing them now. They've had 4 years to migrate and saying, okay, if you have a special case that need our attention, let us know in 1 month, otherwise in 2 months we will just disable your key. And for the special cases, well, I think that's very important, so we might even consider asking funds to fly people to them and sign their key in person instead of creating precedents for, signing keys without being tasked.
I did at one point make a joking suggestion to a DPL, I can't remember exactly who it was, that Gunnar and I should get to fly around the world and personally verify every single DD's key, but for some reason that didn't get accepted. The other thing we have considered is there are various other webs of trust that we can tie into. I know that kernel.org have got fairly strict about getting their keys cross-signed, so we can potentially piggyback on some of those for developers who are geographically remote from other DDs but are actually close to other free software developers, and we can get trust passed to them. So some of that we will consider, and I think that ultimately it comes down to case-by-case basis for that 20%, and we will happily talk to anyone. And I hope this doesn't apply to anyone in the room. It's for people who are watching on the streams or people reporting this afterwards. Anyone at DebConf has no excuse for not having a larger key signed by 2 DDs. At least. And the other thing also to remember is sign keys with your new key. It's a web of trust that needs to link both ways, so don't just get signatures on your new key, but make sure you have signed people, because I think we are actually strengthening the Debian web of trust through this process.
Can we bring those people to DebConf instead of flying the DPL or you guys to wherever they are?
Well, we have this DebConf Newbies initiative that part of the airfare refund we do are usually meant for people who have not yet come to DebConf. That's one way to reach out to them. But yes, I have talked with some people who say, well, no, it's not my interest to go to DebConf.
The reason I say this is then they can get more signatures on their keys by a larger variety of people.
The other potential has been for local groups to cross-sign each other and then get one or a couple of those members to then come and visit somewhere else and get it signed. So you can actually do that much more efficiently as long as you have a concentration of developers somewhere that makes sense.
To jump on what Zach said, do you know if FTP Master is intending to actually block uploads from these keys? Because the security is the concern, and they would be concerned of getting uploads from untrusted keys. Right. So maybe one way to enforce that would be to disallow uploads, but not dropping the keys from the keyring.
Yeah. So the problem would be that the way that the reason we run several different keyrings and maintain them separately ourselves is because the various users of those keyrings determine what to do with the key by which keyring they're in. One potential option, if we want to keep people uploading without having them be able to upload anything, which is the major issue, is that we downgrade their key to a Debian maintainer key, which would mean that they're tied very much to only uploading their own package, so they're not disenfranchised in that way, but we lose the security thing. But really at this point, no, I don't think that's worthwhile. Very special case, we will potentially consider that, but it would have to be incredibly special to say that that's the thing, because then you've still got a weakness there. It's just you've limited it to one package.
If we get down to a point where we have a smallish number of people left who, for whatever reasons, can't travel, haven't travelled, whatever, definitely, please, if you, don't necessarily name and shame. I know I suggested that earlier, tongue-in-cheek. If we can find out geographical areas and post a list somewhere, there are a lot of us who travel anyway as part of our work. In the last year alone, I've met up with probably a dozen people outside of the UK, and I've signed, including people in the Bay Area who managed to not meet other Debian people. That scared me. You know, it's not easy necessarily. There are going to be some people who might live 1,000 miles down a beaten track, and we'll never get to see them. But we must be able to solve this.
Well, one of the, I don't know, eternal huge places that comes to mind that many people there have had problems is Canada. There's a very large amount of Canadians who are far away from anything, and they, well...
So when you were talking about possible trust paths with other organizations, I just wanted to mention that for the GNU project, we're also evaluating our current signing policies and keyring policies for FTP upload, where a lot of the GNU upstream packages live. So we've been looking at the Debian policies and trying to see if maybe this could help with some of the, if we could link those communities together, possibly more signatures could happen that way too.
It would surely help, I think. Maybe one can push for the next topics and then continue. Yeah.
Yeah, when it's about people who have issues meeting other people to get signatures, it goes back to the known problem of verifying them in the first place, which is something we at Front Desk already struggle with and have several ways, including sometimes mailing private. So I don't think that is an issue. That's just something we already do. And I'd be happy if people get in touch. Happy to help. The issue is probably what do we do with people that don't get in touch, and which I would think Mia is kind of the point.
I think the problem here has been that there are still lots and lots of keys that need dealt with. Whenever we did the V3 migration or getting rid of them, quite a few of them had 2 keys in the keyring. They had one V3 and one V4. It was easy enough to remove. Quite a lot of them were people who'd been in the project for a very long time, were actually quite well connected and can get a new key or already had a new key. So it wasn't the short tail at the end of people who needed chased was quite small. And at this point, we're aware that if we just sort of dumped 500 people on DAM or MIA or whatever it is, that's quite a lot. So we are going to do an initial round of mails and try and get the easy ones done and kick people into actually reacting, and then certainly we will engage with any team who wants to come and chase those people. And I'm all for actually producing a list of people who need to move their keys. It's not a naming and shaming, but it's about people who know them maybe being able to kick them into action if they somehow missed a mail, or realizing that they know someone who needs a key signed and they can go and offer and say, I'll sign your key, get off your arse and do it.
So this hasn't been said clearly, and so I feel the need to say it. These keyring things is because one compromised key will have a huge impact on the whole world. I'd like to, sleep better at night.
Yep.
Just please move that forward. We're living in a post-Snowden world. I mean, if people part of the project can't understand that they have at hands the responsibility of thousands of hundreds of thousands of people, then I mean, sorry, read again the social contract. Priorities, users, and so that's one thing. The other thing is that there is the security of the individual keys, and how developers manage their key, and this is a complicated topic. And one thing I would very much love to see. I love you.
Yep. I mean, I was. Yes, sorry. Please do.
I would love to see the keyring maintainer put up a best practices document, and maybe I would love to see the project funds smart cards for any developer who wants one.
Right. Yeah. Well. Thank you for this. I completely agree with what you say. And I was telling them, we should right now interrupt for a little the discussion. We have just one more point here in the queue of things to say. One point that will probably bug more of you because we don't do it. I must say, my own keys, I don't think they're properly handled, and I should be among the first to change this. So we've been talking, for example, how can we improve the key handling practices? Well, for example, separating the main key from the signing keys, requiring keys to expire, and technically we can easily add the checks to see if all of the keys we have are. I mean, we got an expirable.
Can I just justify that for a second?
Please.
So some people are probably horrified by seeing a recommendation or even a possible requirement of key expiration. And so I wanted to just explain why this is potentially a reasonable thing. I know that many people don't have an expiration date set on their keys, and they have a revocation certificate that they have offline someplace, so that if they lose their key or their key gets compromised, they can just publish the revocation certificate and be done with it. In that case, those people there is no good reason to argue that they need an expiration date. But we can't know from the outside whether you actually are maintaining your revocation certificate properly. And we would like to know that you are trying to maintain your key. And if you have an expiration date set on your key, it turns out that you can update the expiration date. So if you update it every couple of years, and move the expiration date out, you will have an expiration date on your key, and by updating the expiration date, you're proving that you still have your key at the very least. You can also even update it after it expires. So
without opening a ticket.
Yeah. So just it's worth being aware that you can do this, and that you should maintain your keys, and that you can actually add new self-sigs on your keys as your key handling practices change. You can add new subkeys and so forth. And so setting a key expiration publicly is a way of ensuring that people get a copy of your new updates from the key servers, because otherwise they'll say, oh, this key is expired, let me refresh it, and then they'll get whatever updates you've updated. So expirations have other advantages beyond like your key suddenly disappearing.
If the use case you have in mind is just see that the person still controls the key, that could just as well be done by seeing that they've used the key, like signed something recently, or would that be okay also to just have expiration dates on subkeys?
So
because I would still.
But you're missing the last use case that I mentioned, which is that people probably will update their keys if they're maintaining them, and they may update by signaling that they prefer different cipher suites. They may update in other ways. The only way to get people to notice that is to make sure that they refresh their keys from the key servers.
So expiration dates on subkeys would still fit that requirement. So after 2 years, my subkeys have expired. Somebody needs to re-download my key to see that there's subkey material.
Yes, that's true. Usable. That's true.
Might having expiration dates on the master keys help mitigate the 1024 problem?
Probably not, because your master key would still have been 124.
I mean, these people who might be potentially MIA,
right.
keys would have just faded out.
So the keys wouldn't have faded out. What you could potentially use it for is a way of saying this key is obviously not in active use, and then potentially flagging that to the MIA team as this key has been expired for a period of time and therefore might need to be looked at.
If it's been expired,
right, but so the point is that actually, if it's been expired, then the FTP won't accept signatures from it, and that's actually probably a good thing if the key is actually idle and it's a weak key. And so there may be other changes that we want in the future, right? We've talked about V3 to V4. We've talked about 1024-bit to larger than 2048-bit. There may be other changes that we want to push in the future, and requiring an expiry gives us at least a window that we can say, okay, you know, when the next change comes down the line, potentially elliptic curve crypto, I'm not requiring this now. I'm just like putting it out there that there are other possible changes that we will be pushing for. Having expiration dates on all the keys in the keyring will make sure that we have a window in which we can actually do that kind of transition that everyone knows about and has seen from the beginning.
Just wanted to point out there's a utility that you can install. It's in Debian, written by someone who's here at DebConf, that will keep your keyring updated over time by slowly refreshing all the keys over Tor, so you are not exposing your social graph, called Parsimony, and it will run in the background. Just keep everything updated for you. I recommend checking that out.
Although I believe there's like someone rewrote Parsimony and it's better somehow. I forget exactly how, but like it's on GitHub, so there may be two versions. Yeah. Yeah, there's a it's written in Bash.
I'd just like to point out that education and documentation could help here. When I was doing signatures recently, it wasn't clear to me what a signature meant, what it meant for a subkey, what it meant to change a parameter on a key in terms of signatures, and all that kind of gets in the way of going forward on this. If it was clearer what exactly it means when you do a signature and what you can and can't do after you've signed a key without invalidating either all or part of that signature, and what does it mean to have a subkey And what does it mean to have a signature on the master versus the subkey? All that stuff is really not covered in the documentation as well as it could be. And if it was, it would be easier for a person to sit down, read the documents, and understand what to do next.
Well, I agree documentation is very important, but on the other hand, I mean, there's so much documentation about crypto handling. I don't think we have to rewrite or even mirror all of the available documentation. I mean, you are right. Maybe we should try at least to link to explanations. We have tried, for example, to show the process. One that comes to mind is when Anna wrote her instructions on how to generate a proper key. Well, we just copied over because it was very well done and it was meant for our use. But there's so many things that we can do about what it means to split a key between subkeys and how to do that. It gets too much in the details, and well,
I challenge you to look at to see what it means to sign a key and what you can do to change it without invalidating the key. It seems very straightforward, and I couldn't find a way to do it without getting into the source code.
So I would be happy to try to work with people who want to do that kind of documentation. I worry that I've internalized too much of RFC 4880 to be able to write in English anymore. But if someone wants
about what the scope is for the signature, just when you sign something, this is what it means. And
sure.
This is what it's
and what I'm saying is, anyone who wants to work on something like that, who wants to run it by someone who knows the gruesome technical details, to make sure that the documentation is both accessible to someone who is trying to get something concrete done and is not technically incorrect, I would be happy to collaborate with that. I'm not sure that I will be able the one to be able to write the specific accessible stuff, but anyone who wants to, come find me. I'm DKG. I will be happy to work with you on it.
Yeah, I think if anyone does want to work on such documentation, then they can quite happily run it by keyring-maint at debian.org. And I think if we got something that was a how-to, we would happily put it up on keyring.debian.org for people to be able to go and view. But we're not the right people to write the accessible documentation, because we've been doing this for years and some of it is second nature and we won't think of the right questions. But to help someone who sort of wants to bridge that gap, absolutely.
And let me also say that one of the problems is that Debian developers, in their crypto handling process and in their packaging process and everything, are a remarkably diverse group, I suspect. And so if we say here is the way to do it, we're going to get pushback from people who say, well, that's not how I do it. I do it better because it's better like this. And it may well be better for them. So this kind of documentation would be great to have, to say, here are, 3 styles. There's the, and we can pick them out and work on something like that, and have something nice and concise that explains the advantages and the comparisons between the different styles. I think that would be useful. But it's still not one thing. Mike?
I would just say that on that point, one of the things that we've done in the Python team is we've said, we have a strong opinion about how things are, even though there's lots of options. And we have sort of the main path down the documentation is, here's how to do it. And then we can have links, that say, well, there are alternatives. Go look over here if you're really interested in that. But I think having a strong opinionated way, which is sort of largely maybe your consensus best practices, is really helpful to people, because a lot of people don't want choice. They want to know what is the right way to do it. And yes, there's a lot of options, but...
So I want to highlight that there's a tool that's called, I think it's in OpenPGP-tools package that's called, it's a Haskell implementation. Thank you, Clint Adams. But it's Hokey lint, and you can run it on your key, and it will give you a list of suggestions about what you can do to improve the situation of your key itself. So I recommend checking that out.
No Valve games for users of 102.4-bit keys. Problem solved.
That's not an incentive for some of us. Are we done with the slides? Did you get to everything? Okay.
Yeah.
Could you say briefly something about the future of OpenPGP itself?
I can try. Yeah. Well, you were trying to get it to update.
there's two questions here. One is the future of OpenPGP, and one is the future of GPG in Debian. And so I'll talk about OpenPGP. OpenPGP is moving at a glacial pace towards elliptic curve cryptography, which is not widely implemented. But I don't know if folks have seen, Google has produced a not yet distributed alpha version webmail plugin for Chrome called end-to-end encryption that generates new keys that are elliptic curve keys. GNU-PG's 2.1 beta has elliptic curve crypto in it. So there's a push towards they're much smaller keys that per strength. So for something comparably strong, the keys and the signatures are much shorter. It's a different kind of crypto, and it will be hopefully available in experimental, possibly by the end of DebConf. So this ties into the evolution of GPG. So if folks are interested in experimenting with newer versions and newer crypto, either come to the GNU-PG-maint session or come find some of us afterwards and watch experimental.
It's worth pointing out that this ties somewhat into Wookie's talk from the other day, in that even if we get elliptic curve crypto in not Jessie but whatever comes next, until that release becomes stable and is deployed throughout the Debian infrastructure, we will have no way to accept those keys as part of Debian because nothing will be able to verify them. So it will be some time before we can accept elliptic curves as part of the Debian keyring, which is kind of unfortunate.
I have a moderately related question about strength, which is that it's apparently the case that fingerprints are always SHA-1. And I was wondering if there are standard practices to get away from using SHA-1 here.
So there is some move towards an OpenPGP v5 format, which will standardize on a separate hash, and I think it's SHA-256 or SHA-512. There's no decision yet. I mean, one of the things about the changes from V3 to V4 was V3 was using MD5 sums over a different set of the key material, which is part of the problem, and V4 moved to SHA-1, but that's going to require an incompatible change in the actual PGP format.
So yeah, you don't have to use SHA-1. You could use MD5 by using the V3 keys. Yeah, no, you don't do that. That is not a serious suggestion. This is actually the way that you forge a fingerprint in OpenPGP V3 fingerprint. The fingerprint is actually done by an MD5 of the modulus. So RSA is a modulus and an exponent, and it's MD5 over the concatenation of the modulus and the exponent. So the way that you forge the fingerprint is you just cut up the bit string in a different place, and you find a new modulus M and a new exponent E, and you just look for that until you find a factorable M prime, and now you've got a key that has the exact same fingerprint. So that's been fixed in V4 keys as of 20 years ago, 12 years ago, I don't know, a long time ago. But I wanted to talk about why, so we can move away from that. That's a cryptographic problem. But the SHA-1 for fingerprints is not, I don't believe that is directly attackable right now. So SHA-1 is attackable for collisions. No one has published an SHA-1 collision, but actually OpenPGP v4 fingerprints are not a situation where we're worried about the collision resistance of the hash. We're worried about pre-image resistance. And pre-image resistance is significantly stronger than collision resistance. So yes, we are moving away from SHA-1, but for the fingerprints themselves, that's actually not that important.
So another kind of related question is, I guess inline PGP is like not cool anymore. And we use it all over a lot of our infrastructure. In fact, even keyring.debian.org, when I looked at the process for updating keys, it says don't use PGP MIME because it breaks it.
Please fix request tracker.
Yeah.
Please fix request tracker not to mangle PGP MIME and not to decide to re-encode mails and not to do all manner of things. Absolutely, PGP MIME mails is the right way to do things as far as we're concerned, but we're limited by the infrastructure we have. RT will actually do signature verification for you, but for hopefully fairly obvious reasons, we want to do the verification ourselves rather than trust some random piece of infrastructure.
Yeah, well, even sometimes it's quite bothering, and we have encoding issues when we have some keys correctly sent to RT, inline signed, but somebody used, I don't know, the wrong charset or whatever, and we can spend hours looking for what's wrong.
I actually know what goes on here. What actually goes on is that the likes of Mutt will choose the best character set it can find to try and represent your mail as 7 or 8 bits. So rather than encoding as Unicode, it'll, for example, use Latin 1. And RT, in its wisdom, decides that it's going to re-encode everything into UTF-8, which is fine, but then it sends out the mail in UTF-8, so your mail has been re-encoded from Latin 1 to UTF-8, and therefore doesn't validate when we receive it anymore. Line wrapping also happens. There's a whole bunch of things that mangle mail that then mean that you can't validate the signature, and I've got quite adept at trying to figure out what they are and fixing it up so that they validate without having to go and bother developers again. But yeah.
But fix RT. Yes. Who's it for all? But it's not just RT, it's also archive software generates
The archive is generating signed mails which are pretty much the changes file. Rather than it, I mean, you'd have to basically take the changes file that's been uploaded. What you've done is you've uploaded a clear signed file. You'd have to take that apart, turn it into a PGP MIME thing, and I think that's a bit more understandable. I think that we should all be able to send PGP MIME mails and have them just work. And I will accept that the keyring-maint team are the worst example of people who can't just accept PGP MIME mails. But we don't have the time to go and fix RT, and we're very grateful for DSA for running the RT instance for us, and we don't expect them to go and fix it. So, yeah, please send patches.
I just wanted to add something to respond to the question about the future of GNU PG. I know that the project itself is moving pretty slow at times, and part of the reason for that is the developers are having a difficult time sustaining the development, and so they're looking for help, not just actual help, but funding to keep it going. So if you happen to be a large company with lots of money to throw around, I know they're looking for some. It might help move things a little faster, I don't know, but I think GNU PG needs a lot of labor help to move things quicker.
Also on that subject, there's a GPG1 and a GPG2, and I don't actually know anything about what the difference is or which one I should use, and then there's also like a GPGV and a GPGMe and something else. For someone who doesn't actually care and just wants to sign things and just wants to verify things, what should I be using? Is there a canonical, just use this answer?
Well, GPG is going to be on your Debian system no matter what, so you can just use that. But this is the wrong talk for that. This is keyring-maint, not GNU PG-maint. And GNU PG-maint will actually have a talk, I believe it's tomorrow, and please come, we'll talk about the details. There's been a lot of discussion about what we can do to improve that situation, but that would be the place to talk about it.
Short term, just use the GPG that comes with it.
You've already got it, it's there, it works. Okay. Any other questions? Yes, there's a key signing event. What's at 2:30 to 3:15, and I believe it will be in this room. Correct? Yeah. Yes, it'll be in this room. So come to that. Get your keys signed.
Okay.
All right, you're out 1 minute early.